Battle has been an unavoidable element of life since the beginning of time. Animals have always fought for food and survival, and humans have waged war for innumerable reasons since the advent of our species. Territorial, political, religious, and other bases for bloody conflict have written violence into our blood. Violence is so much a part of us, in fact, that we have developed a recreational instinct for it and created games in order to slake our evolutionary bloodlust. The following are some of the means by which we scratch our bloody little itches. Some may have come from long ago, but all are presently practiced. Here now, for our sadistic glee, are the 10 most brutal modern-day fight sports. Number 10. Catch wrestling. Catch wrestling, for those unfamiliar with the term, is basically a combined form of grappling, allowing for techniques from wrestling, judo, and jujutsu. It values both pins and submissions while focusing more on the power of wrestling as opposed to the finesse-oriented principles of judo and jujutsu, the names of both of which translate roughly to gentle way in reference to their focus on technique over strength. Number 9. Bare knuckle boxing. Recently returning to the US is the art of bare knuckle boxing. This new iteration, known as the Bare Knuckle Fighting Championship, BKFC, features a new rounded, 4-rope squared circle but is otherwise the same brutal sport that was banned in 1889. Broughton rules and all the immediately possible injuries in boxing are largely obvious, including damage to the skull, eyes, ribs, and hands. Broken hands by the puncher are very common in fight sports, a risk greatly exacerbated in bare knuckle context. Number 8. Sambo. Russia has a reputation as a cold, hard, unforgiving place, and the fight sports that come from there are no different. Sambo isn't just a fight sport but also a military combat system as well, with separate training systems for each version: military, sport, self-defense, freestyle, specialized. Sambo is a Russian portmanteau meaning self-defense without weapons, and it is essentially the official fighting system of Russia. It is used by everyone, including soldiers, police, athletes, citizens, and, presumably, Sambo was formed in the early 20th century by a series of Russian martial artists by combining. Number 7. Muay Thai. Muay Thai is a form of extremely aggressive kickboxing that originated in Thailand. It evolved from an earlier, more military style called Muay Boran. As warring with neighboring nations decreased, its military nature declined in favor of sport combat, and Muay Thai was born. It was always an important national pastime in Thailand but gained worldwide popularity in the 1970s and 1980s, when Muay Thai fighters gained a reputation for readily defeating kickboxers of other disciplines. Number 6. Mixed martial arts. MMA is largely exactly what it sounds like, a sport in which competitors of various fighting styles compete against each other in a unified context. The rules, or relative lack thereof, are what make this type of competition one of the most brutal on earth. A fairly accurate way to describe it would be to combine the rules and allowances of Muay Thai with catch wrestling, and it thus carries the combined risks of both. But there's more. There is no pinning in MMA, so any victory in grappling is achieved by the much more dangerous act of submission holds or, even more brutally than that, the ground and pound. This term refers to the act of throwing punches and elbows almost always to the head at an opponent who is pinned to the ground. It is as difficult to defend against as it is Number 5. Historic Medieval Battle, HMB. Saying medieval may cause one to question whether or not this is a modern sport, but the term actually refers to a modern sport intending to simulate medieval combat for modern athletes. The sport essentially involves competitors donning armor and wielding steel weapons, simulating the nature of medieval fighting as closely as possible without killing each other. The armor sounds like it might remove a good deal of the sport's brutality, but the axes and maces put it right back in. Number 4. Medieval MMA. This sport, just as it may sound, is essentially an MMA equivalent to HMB. Two fighters enter a ring in medieval equipment very similar to that worn by HMB fighters. From here, many elements are similar to what would be a one-on-one HMB match, but with one drastic difference: you're not out when you're knocked down. Victory in medieval MMA is claimed through means similar to hand-to-hand MMA knockout or submission except with weapons. Number 3. Eskrima. Rounding out the section on weapons is the national martial arts sport the Philippines Eskrima, also known as Kali or Arnis. Some may argue that the three are technically different styles with different focuses, but they all fall under the category known as FMA, or Filipino martial arts, and are largely interchangeable. The art was admired by colonial Spaniards but was banned by 1596 and completely forbidden by 1764, due to it being too dangerous. The Spanish attempted to wipe out FMA, as well as most of Filipino culture. But the natives found ways to keep their traditions alive and hidden, with FMA concepts specifically being hidden in forms of dance. Number 2. Calcio Storico. Originating from a game designed by the Romans to keep their legionnaires fit for battle, Harpastum, Calcio Storico is commonly referred to as the most violent sport on earth, though the previous entries on this list have all been martial arts competitions. This sport is a predecessor of modern soccer and also shares many similarities with American football and rugby. The ball is carried much like in rugby or American football and then thrown into one of a series of spaced apart goals on the far side of the opposing team's territory. Number 1. Lethwei. Though Muay Thai has already been used as a representative for Southeast Asian boxing, Lethwei is being listed separately, and for a very brutal reason. Firstly, Lethwei is bare knuckle, although hand wraps are used, and in response to Muay Thai's nickname of the art of 8 limbs, Lethwei is referred to as the art of 9 limbs, as it is the only combat sport remaining that allows for headbutts. Those facts, however, are little more than incidental in the face of the real reason for which Lethwei is the number 1 item on this list, that being its handling of the concept of a knockout. In Lethwei, when a fighter is knocked out, unable to answer an 8 count, rather than the fight being called, the unconscious fighter is dragged back to his corner, revived with smelling salts, and given the option to continue. The fight is not called until a fighter chooses not to continue or until the fight runs out of time, in which case the fighter who knocked out the other more times wins.